Have you ever pondered over the complexities that arise when a mainstream culture collides with an indigenous one? When the rhythm of modern civilization beats against the ancient drum of indigenous societies, who gets to set the tempo? Consider this. A culture, supported by the might of a nation-state, encounters an indigenous society. This society, as defined by the International Labour Organization's Convention 169, is marked by a historical connection to the land they inhabit, a unique culture, language, and livelihood that sets them apart from mainstream society, and a self-identity as an indigenous society. Yet they find themselves marginalized, reduced to a tiny minority that struggles to have their voices heard in regular democratic elections. In this encounter, we find a predator-prey dynamic unfolding. The predator culture, stronger and eager to extract resources, needs physical control over the indigenous territories. But it's not about brute force alone. There's a need to maintain an appearance of legitimacy. And so begins the oppression of the indigenous culture. The language and songs of the indigenous people are prohibited, their cultural expressions stifled, their heritage erased bit by bit. But the predator culture's actions aren't without a mask. It needs to maintain its international legitimacy, to present itself as a champion of human rights and environmental considerations. It weaves a narrative that glosses over the harsh realities of oppression, keeping its own population in blissful ignorance. The history lessons omit the stories of cultural domination. The textbooks remain silent on the exploitation. Yet, as the indigenous culture is suppressed, what remains of it is exoticized. Images of the indigenous culture are idealized, repackaged, and sold through the mainstream's tourism industry. The indigenous people, their culture stripped and commodified, are rendered mere spectacles for the tourists. To recap, the interaction between mainstream and indigenous cultures is marked by a predator-prey dynamic. The mainstream culture, in its quest for resources and control, oppresses the indigenous culture, suppresses their language and cultural expressions, and keeps its own population in ignorance about the history of oppression. Yet it maintains a facade of legitimacy, presenting itself as a champion of human rights and environmental considerations. Meanwhile, the remnants of the indigenous culture are idealized and commodified for the tourism industry. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the complex dance between mainstream and indigenous cultures. A dance where the music is often dictated by the predator culture, and the indigenous culture struggles to keep its rhythm alive. It's a dance that continues to this day, a dance that we all must strive to understand and, if possible, change.